welcome back to Underrated Movie. I'm your guy, I'm your man, Mr. Alton Henry. Concluding M. Night Shyamalan's trilogy, the East Road 177 trilogy, we will discuss Glass. Starring James McAvoy, Bruce Willis, Samuel Jackson, Anya Taylor-Joy, and Sarah Paulson, with a cameo from M. Night. And it's a story that concludes Unbreakable and Split Together, where the Horde and the Overseer meet the man behind it all, Mr. Glass, inside an insane asylum, where their interactions might trigger the potential means of superheroes or superhumans existing in the real world. Came out in 2019, and I can tell you I was heavily excited for this film, and I couldn't tell you how much excitement I had for any film that I had for a long time. Maybe a little bit more so than the Evangelion conclusion, but because Unbreakable grew on me over time, and then No One Split had one of the best endings to anything ever, really capitalizes a uniqueness of superheroes, in which, the genre, which I guess M. Night really had something of an intent for a while, and just took him almost 20 years to kind of get it off the ground. After Unbreakable was not really a huge success, but over time it just grew a strong following, and then he was able to conclude his series, which I'm thankful for. Um, man, and it's probably one of the boldest superhero films compared to Zack Snyder's take on it, but this one is more grounded in reality, psychological. Where it they're superheroes, supervillain stories, but they don't feel like it. This one initially does, in a sense, at least the intro, and then the last 20 minutes or so, where you get that superhero vibe. Then it goes into a slow piece kind of film, analyzing what if, superheroes are real, or trying to convince Mr. Glass, David Dunn, and the Horde that it's all in their head. And really, from what we've seen, the capabilities of these characters, which I wish we've gotten more of it, you do see that they do possess the abilities that are not the norm. And I really like this premise. But the movie, I feel like, also has a fault of its own, where it feels like the audience is you're being convinced that it's also in the heads of the characters, which is not the case. So and I believe this is the perspective of the film, where you're trying to really understand the motive of Dr. Staples, played by Sarah Paulson, who I really believe who's technically the main star of this movie, because you see a lot of her in the film, and then you see a lot of the Horde. You see both of those characters pretty much a good duration of the film. I believe the reason for the Horde screen time is that, well, he was the most recent character in Mr. Glass and David Dunn. You haven't seen them for like 20 years, except that little small cameo Bruce Willis had at the end of Split, um, which was kind of okay, but I feel like it diminished and underuses the other characters, such as Mr. Glass and David Dunn. I feel like they could have been used more. And I was fine with David Dunn if the intent was for. I think this is the intent for what M. Night originally had for his movie, where I believe the first 20 minutes, once those characters that are introduced, you are focused on Dr. Staples, who's pretty much you're entering her world. You're entering her world to get you to believe that these characters are normal, which is again not from what we've seen from the other previous two movies. That we've seen them do unexplainable and amazing things. Though I feel like with David Dunn, you don't see much of his abilities, yet you've hinted, and I actually like that they hinted, but I wish they demonstrated, which they do, but more of his full potential in Glass, which you don't really. And to me, I feel like the Split character is more of the highlight, and I think might be the character that M. Night was really pushing for, because that's the character that pretty much feels like he's the center of it all. But I feel like the first half of this movie, the first hour, or at least after 20 minutes, at least a good 35 minutes of the film is Dr. Staples literally convincing these superheroes or these superhumans that they're not particularly special. And then Mr. Glass, who fakes it all, pretends he's comatose, pretty much, calls bullshit on Dr. Staples and is like, hey, you know what? I've seen what you can do. Let's get the hell out of here. And David Dunn pretty much gets sidelined, which I understand. And honestly, I'm on the side of the fans on this one, where I believe David Dunn shouldn't have been convinced he was not special or he was all in his head. The guy, and I think this is a continuity with writing with M. Night. Even though I love this film, I love the idea of this film. I feel like I feel like M. Night really didn't take advantage of how he wanted to use his own original characters in this, and that's what was really upsetting for me after rewatching this movie. I still love this movie, but seeing the flaws that I feel like he could have capitalized more on these characters, I feel like he could have explored more. And I actually originally had a video up a few years back explaining that how he probably shouldn't have had this film presented. Because I actually like the idea that at least some of the first hour you're centered on Dr. Staples, really seeing her pretty much disarming these superhumans. And then you have the next hour, Mr. Glass pretty much inspiring the Horde and then David Dunn to snap out of Dr. Staples's tricks and to show their true potential, which really David Dunn is going to try to stop Mr. Glass and the Horde from doing any damage on, you know, preventing them from doing evil acts. I don't mind the slowness part of it, and I don't mind that the film kind of takes its time to try to prove its point on. I actually kind of like that it tries to use comic books as a blueprint, but I feel like the movie also self-indulges itself where it tries to be smart. Where I feel like the movie should have been more testing ideas than feeling like it's a know-it-all. I feel like the director got a little bit too indulgent with his work here. Not saying the movie is awesome. The movie is awesome. The cinematography, the music, even though there's an absence of the unbreakable music here, I feel like that could have been really man, I literally would play certain music choices in the film, and I feel like it would have fit. Um, what I really wanted, if M. Night really had his intent to limit David Dunn's screen time, then I feel like he should have had the same intent for the Beast to try to balance the screen time between the two and really focus on Dr. Staples, which I think it was, but I think it could have been stronger. really selling that point of thinking these superheroes aren't super. As we all know that that's not true, but the idea is to convince them that they are not, that they don't have any powers. And then again, but stronger, Mr. Glass, Elijah Price, snapping out of it and convincing everybody, like, yeah, but pretty much the same thing. But for those points, I wish they were stronger on that. The ending I thought was bold until like the very last ending where I feel like it was a Hollywood safe net. Like the very end, like literally like the last 3 to 5 minutes of the movie. That part I was a little bit let down because I felt like M Night tried to do a bold ending, but I felt like it felt like too much of a downer. That I feel like he pulled back and didn't stick to that really depressing ending. Um, Bold ending, but that last 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, should have stuck with that downer ending. Now, a few years ago, when I originally had another video of Glass, I explained in that video that I guess it was more of a tweaking of the film, where I felt like certain issues or certain uh, character choices or certain ideas of the film could have been more explored. Where instead of a twist about the secret society, to be honest with you, in the way how they had everything set up with how they tried to have these characters held captive or holding their cell, I feel like it was. I feel like I didn't feel like it, I feel like it was more of a reveal than it is than a twist. I felt like something was up. There were certain things that went on in the movie that hospital staff would do that didn't make a whole lot of, well, I wouldn't say it makes sense. It didn't feel like it would happen in reality. Um, like it didn't. I didn't believe it would happen in reality, where they would have like after they see the Beast and David Dunn fight, which is an awesome fight, short fight, but pretty awesome. They magically appear and hold him pretty much like prepared to like gun him down. I mean that's a SWAT team, but they were prepared to gun him down. And then Doctor Staples comes and convince them like she knows who they are. She knows everything about them. To me, and then she orders the staff or the SWAT team to immediately take them to the insane asylum. I don't know that actually could really happen. I think you're in jail for a bit and then you court an insane asylum. I don't know. Maybe somebody could clear that up for me, but I don't think that would actually happen. Um, I gotta stop saying but in that video, and this goes with re-editing the movie. First, I would have the movie begin with a little deleted scene of Dr. Staples and Elijah's mother talking about Elijah's progress and how long he's been in the asylum and see if there's any hope or anything of him changing. And he's still in comatose. And then you see the next scene, and there's a deleted scene of that. And then you see the next scene of, um, you know, Elijah's mother trying to motivate him, and he still just looks at her. But it's done in the point of view shot, so you never actually see Mr. Glass. I mean, maybe a snippet of one. Kind of just build up a little bit of suspense. Then you have the guy come in, the health caretaker guy, says the line is like, "Don't worry, you got two new friends," which would mean that part of the movie is gonna happen later in the film. So it was kind of like an intro prologue, but that sequence there means it's already gonna happen. Um, so it's like a flash forward. You're flash forward, then the movie jumps back to how it originally plays out. You have the Beast pretty much playing with his victims as it played in the original. Then you have the credits pop up. I actually like the credits, the alternate credits of the hospital, uh, and it kind of plays a little bit like the original Unbreakable, but it plays with the new music. And actually, I like that opening. I actually like that opening, and then they could have played a little bit of those kids stealing, knocking some bystander out, and then taking off with their goods. And then the movie plays out all pretty much the same, similar to the original film, and then you see them get taken into the same asylum. But then I would also add that deleted scene in between some point of Elijah pretty much letting her mom know, his mom know, that I'm just faking being comatose. It's a deleted scene just to kind of get you to really build up that he's really planning something, so he's faking it. Actually, I wish they kept that scene in because I felt like it would have been more adding to character to Mr. Glass. I feel like there could have been more. I was like, this is a badass cover. I remember the poster was badass. And it plays pretty much the same until they head into the pink room where Dr. Staples is trying to convince David Dunn and the Whore that they're not super. It fails. It failed. Well, she's able to convince the Horde, but David, his ass shouldn't have been convinced. I would have inserted a flashback and a delete scene of him lifting those big weights. There's two scenes, but there's a deleted scene of him lifting those weights up, and he lists them. I think at his school that he's security guard, that he's you um, at his job. So I would have him think back, and I think there's another snippet deleted scene somewhere M Night took out, and it's nowhere to be found of David Dunn doing more superhero activities. It's in the trailer. Maybe a snippet of that, and then he acknowledges like, "Nah, this is BS. I don't believe this. For the last 20 years, I've been going out doing things you can't really imagine, more so than people that you claim may have these super strength abilities, but still considered to be human." I would have him preach examples of what he has done as a superhero that he believes he can outmatch anybody on the planet and has done things. Maybe lift a truck from somebody of a car accident that's in need of help. I would put him, I would literally tell that to have him say that to Dr. Staples that I have done things unbelievably like things that no normal man cannot do. So whatever you got planned up, I don't believe it. I know who I am. And I would have him say like for the last years or so, like I've been trying to convince myself of something that I'm not. But suddenly when I realize my full potential, what I can do, I know who I am. I know what I can do. You know, and then have him also kind of put out certain speculations that he doesn't believe that the doctor is who she says he is, and finds it kind of weird that the her and a SWAT team with a group of other doctors were there, and they just suddenly kidnap him. The superhumans, and then I would have Mr. Glass snap out of his trance, getting annoyed with Dr. Staples' rant about convincing him that they're not super. I would be like, girl, okay, I'm done acting. I'm tired of this bullshit. Like for 20 freaking years, I'm in here, and you still try to convince me that we are crazy. I am not crazy, girl. I'm one of the smartest man, and I can prove it. For the last 20 years, we can do the same thing over and over again, and then have a little small union between David and Elijah, in which David just like, dude, F you, you killed a lot of people. You're crazy. And then I would also have David acknowledge, like, without you, I do realize, even though this is crazy, that I do realize my full potential. I understand now who I am thanks to you. But what you've done, the way you've done about it, was wrong. And then I would get the horde thinking a little bit too. And then David and the horde would get unrattled and then break out of it. And then they would have a little fight in the pink room. And then Mr. Glass would see it in a maze, like, I can't believe it. Like, even though I might be a little bit crazy trying to convince people these that these superhero comics could be blueprints, I firmly believe, realistically, mythology wise, that we could exist. And I have him rejoice, get all emotional on it while David Dunn and the Horde is fighting. Maybe break through a wall a little bit, and then Dr. Staples' staff will try to put them down by using their devices that they have in their rooms. Like, they'll flash the lights in the Horde to knock his personality back, and then it will just spray David down with a bunch of water. Just drown his ass in it. Just like he sprayed him in the head for him to suffocate, and it take Elijah out of the way. And then, yeah, Casey Cook, I think she didn't really have too much to do in this movie, but with this one, and here's the thing, M. Night Shyamalan made a point to where people who've experienced trauma some point in their life later it'll manifest into something to where they can have some sort of potential abilities, some sort of superhuman abilities. I would have made it known to Casey Cook that maybe she might have some sort of superpower, maybe abilities similar to Rogue from X-Men, where she's able to touch someone and is able to kind of, well, no, that was what David does, but kind of touch someone and could drain their life force in a way. But only those maybe who have evil intentions. But if their intentions are really good, it doesn't do anything. Maybe she heals them. Maybe she heals them because I noticed in Split she's hesitant to touch people. She's hesitant. She is very hesitant to touch people, and I do acknowledge from what her character went through in Split. She she was more attentive to touching the Beast, but everybody else she was kind of distant from. David Dunn's son, I would try to have him constantly try to convince Dr. Staples to get his dad out of there. So then the scene where the Horde and Elijah meets, I would have that scene introduced next. Then I would have then have that scene gone for a little bit, maybe do some things a little bit differently. A little bit. I still like the scene where you see Mr. Glass wakes up and then you have Dr. Staples coming in and rushing in and having put in like um, some sleeping stuff into his arm because after she claims that she saw him roaming around on the floor. Maybe put that in a little bit before the next scene of another examination that Dr. Staples is trying to do to brainwash these superhuman guys to believe that they don't have powers. And then I would have the other delete scene come in, and pretty much same as before. Then the next part, I would have Dr. Staples invite David Dunn's son and Casey Cook after she notices that each of these characters and Elijah's mom knowing that these characters have strong connection to them, and try to use like some sort of psychonosis, kind of like, wouldn't necessarily say a game, but to realize. I think she would do this to kind of realize how much these people mean to him, why they believe that they are what they are, superhuman. Like Elijah with Elijah's mother, Casey Cook to Kevin Crandall Crumb, and Joseph to David Dunn. Then I would have them switch around roles. So Casey to David, um, Joseph to the Horde. No, no, Joseph. No, 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 no. Joseph to Mr. Glass, and Elijah's mother to David. They kind of have Dr. Staples to see if they really have like arch to really believe that the superhero relationship thing is really, to see where their connection really lies, and to see what they lack. You have strong support from these characters, but you also, by switching them around, you also see something that each of these three characters lack from the other. Something I think that's kind of interesting, where um, Casey lacks a protective father figure. David, same thing with Elijah. Elijah never knows who his father is. David, maybe not able to really connect with people. Maybe switch around where Casey interacts with David, and she, you know, touches him and maybe heals certain part of himself psychologically that he's probably been missing. But when she and Joseph getting mad at Mr. Glass, claiming that he will never have a father figure, and then that upsets Elijah a bit, and Elijah taunts him. And then with the Beast not really experiencing the love and affection of what a parent should have for his child, to really kind of understand what these characters lack from the other. Each character has the strongest of what the other one lacks, if that makes sense. If I hope that makes sense. Then when Dr. Stable touches Anya, it's like, okay, you can go. I think we've got what we wanted from this little experiment. Then Casey Cook manages somehow her powers almost kills Dr. Staples, believing, he has some evil intentions. And then the guards take her away and they lock her up. The Beast tries to break her out of there, but he gets apprehended. And then by somebody calling his name, his weakness. And then David then gets apprehended. And then Elijah Price sits there, is mesmerized, like, I can't believe this. We have another one. And then Casey Cook gets locked up. Sometime later, well, Casey Cook is locked up, the Horde and Mr. Glass come to an agreement that they're going to break out of the asylum. They convince the world that superhumans exist, while Mr. Glass plans on formulating his own little possible league of supervillains, while the Horde will his plans is to avenge people who's been done wrong, in a way to where he feels people who are uh, unbroken or not worthy or hasn't endured enough trauma in their lives. He's gonna kill him as the beast. As the beast. So knowing those characters, their intent, They break out similar to how they do it in the original movie. And then Mr. Glass, who's been there for 20 years, suddenly reveals like I guys, I like it's only a matter of time, but this is not some sort of hospital, okay? This is an institution. They're trying to Dr. Staples has been finding other superhuman people, superhuman beings around the area, around the globe, and bringing them here. And their idea is to brainwash them, convince them that they are that having superpowers are on their head and believing that they're crazy. And by doing that, they're disarming them their full superhuman abilities because you have to believe that you can do these things, otherwise your powers don't work. I think that's how it kind of goes. If you believe yourself that you can do this, then you believe yourself that you can, thus activating your powers, especially through a moment of a psychological or emotional response, which is shown in some of these movies. And when she succeeds, she basically kills them and gets rid of their bodies and has them trophies and has some sort of like Illuminati kind of like organization, kind of like what I think in X-Men 2, somewhat, kind of, a little bit with the military, harness the powers and all that. I know I feel like that's cliche territory that jumps into Marvel, but I'm just feel like I should fix some of this stuff, even though it might seem Hollywoody. I feel like they could still bring it to a realistic approach because I feel like they would do something like this. So similar breaks out. Mr. Glass and antagonizes David Dunn, saying what they're gonna do. Plays out similar, and David Dunn breaks out, get his costume, and then David Dunn wanders through the hall, takes out a few guys. He doesn't get hurt. Somehow stumbles somewhere in the basement where he feels like he needs to go rescue Casey Cook. Now, Mr. Glass, kind of stalling, promises they would rescue Casey Cook, which they don't do right away. Convinces the Beast, which he was manipulating him a little bit, that they need to take out a few other sectors and spots within the hospital and minimize, maybe take down a few guards just so there won't be any of them to stop or try to get reinforcements. David Dunn manages to find Casey Cook locked up somewhere in the basement, near dead after blood of the hospital staff trying to drain her power. David Dunn takes her out of that and tries to carry her out while still trying to battle other hospital staffs. The Beast breaks out while Mr. Glass watches in amazement of the Beast's full potential, his abilities. Maybe have him get a little buffer and stronger each time he does something. Kind of maybe similar like the Hulk, but not too exaggerated like the Hulk, but just more buffer and just vainer. He breaks out of there, kidnaps a few victims so the Beast could feast later, and takes on a bunch of guys. So some of them are SWAT. Elijah's mother comes in to help Casey cook. Joseph comes in, and then they have their cinematic fight while Sarah Paulson, Dr. Staples, brings in more reinforcements. More reinforcements comes in. Both David Dunn and the Beast take them down, and then without having that over dramatic sense, and I get why and I did it. to pay tribute to the overdramatic sense of comic book stuff. The reveal or the twist, I would remain the same with Mr. Glass accidentally creating uh, both the overseer and the horde with the accident he created with killing the horde's dad, and the way that he killed him, which I kind of liked, but I would have it a little bit more, feel a little bit more. I don't know. I would have him kneel down, the beast kneel down, bring him close to him, and kind of does the same thing. But then I would have the beast break one of Mr. Glass's legs, then quickly runs over to Elijah's mother. David tries to stop him, overpowers David Dunn, grabs Elijah's mother, throws her against Mr. Glass, which breaks his body, and then grabs Elijah's mother and breaks her neck while Mr. Glass watches. Mr. Glass, seeing his mother dead, drops on the floor, breaks his legs, and breaks more of his bones again. Pretty much him dying. The beast grabs David Dunn, throws him in a tank, similar as before, and ends out similar where he breaks out. David Dunn is drained of his power, and which honestly, that was an intense freaking scene. Like I was like, wow. Like I really believe David Dunn was not gonna win. But back to my fan fiction. It would end similar in a way when Casey Cook comes in and snaps him back out of to Kevin Crandall Crumb, and then once they see that sniper, I'll have Casey Cook accidentally trip in the horde's embrace, accidentally get shot by the sniper, which accidentally kills her. Kevin Crandall Crumb snaps back into the beast, but still having some of Kevin's consciousness. Takes out all the snipers and all the other secret society. Joseph still notices his father's being killed off, or not dead yet, but drowning in that puddle. Tries to rescue his father, which he barely manages. One of the guards from the Clover Society accidentally sets their gun to takes their safety off their gun and accidentally blasts Joseph, kills him. David sees that, starts killing all the freaking guards around his area. The Beast and the Overseer see each other one last time. The Beast planning to basically just go onto a raging rampage and just kill everybody he sees. David realizes that he has to take him down. Well, just having to witness the loss of his son. So they fight again, and this is the thing I've noticed. If somebody says his name, the horde's name, his real name, Kevin Crandall Crumb, somebody else has to say it. I think he could. I think he could constantly go back to his human form to Kevin Crandall Crumb if somebody else says it by giving it a little time. I don't. If the same person says it right after it, I don't think it works. But if somebody else says it, I think it can. The same person can say it, but it takes a while, some time for them to. But I don't think the same person could say it right after. You have to wait a while. So, and also, this is the thing I've noticed too, from the original film. David Dunn sat there with Mr. Glass and uh in the pink room where Dr. Stables pretty much said Kevin Crandall Crumbs' name. David Dunn saw this and in his thought process, he should have been thinking, holy shit, you just gave away this dude's weak spot, his kryptonite. And David Dunn should have used that in the original film as like Kevin Crandall Crumb. It should have taken his ass out and broke his neck. If he remembered that, said Kevin Crandall Crumb, he would have taken his ass out. But in my theory, in my interpretation of how the film should have been or could have been, he does. After a big extravaganza fight, he says his name multiple times and then he turns to Kevin Crandall Crumb, fully human, and breaks his freaking neck. Police comes in, surrounds the area, and then David Dunn gets taken to the police station, but before he walks to his dead son's corpse to see him one last time, and then they're trying to figure out what to do. The news head a little bit. You hear the overseer is finally captured, and then some events that happen at the insane asylum. It's like a gold mine. And then you have some sort of person that comes up to him, talks to him about the whole event, and then tells him secretly or hints him that he's part of a society of rescuing and harboring superheroes for a team, like some freaking Avengers or some shit like that. And then inviting David Dunn or like a Avengers, like an X-Men group, inviting David Dunn to join, or at least to stay with them for a while once this thing blows over, while they have other secret government officials to try to cover up the evidence. And then you have the closing crawls of David Dunn of the next journey that he does of joining this society and then seeking out other superhuman um, people to join their team or to rescue them before any potential Clover organization tries to capture him and kill them off. With a little bit of a happy ending. So David Dunn lives. Yes. Or, you could have had him drown along with Kevin Crandall Crumb in the water and then bring him into some sort of river or some sort of pond and both of them drown and die. That's just a second ultimate. That's how I would have had it, man. That's probably how I would have had it. I mean, that's what I would have had. I mean, I really love this film. I enjoyed it for what it was. I think it's very underrated. I praise M. Night Shyamalan for doing something bold with this genre to really try to tell a realistic, grounded, and believable, which I believe something like this would happen. Um, how the movie ends with a few errors. Like I feel like there was an uneven balance of screen time. Um, maybe it could be a number of reasons, but all in all, for what this was as an experimental superhero movie, rare of its kind, I think Glass is a underrated superhero movie. Not necessarily a masterpiece yet, but underrated for sure. And get the conversation started about it because I'm telling you, this film should have. I mean, it made its money, but man, I think it's severely underrated and needs to be really, I mean, really thought about because the movie also touches about like comic books, possibly. How could I word this? really documenting potentially real life events or mythology like ideas where what you're reading in a comic book could have potentially happened, but it's just exaggerated. But like reading mythology, reading folk tales, and and so forth. Something similar like that. That's kind of the point. Even dated back to the original Unbreakable, like Mr. Glass made it to a point where he believes and suspects that comic books are a blueprint to something bigger that society is just covering up. And I firmly believe it. So it's like really like the bigger picture is, I guess Mr. Glass is kind of like a hero in a way, anti-hero, or kind of like a Magneto kind of like villain, where he's trying to expose a somewhat Illuminati group that's trying to prevent superheroes from existing. And to a point, he kind of succeeds in the film if you really pay attention to Unbreakable and then go back. So the dialogue is always important with this movie. The dialogue is always important. Um, this is amazing. I like, and ever since this trilogy concluded, this has been on my mind ever since, and couldn't I could not like any other like Marvel film that has come out since then. I could not stop thinking about this franchise, this trilogy, the East Row 177 trilogy. I could not stop thinking about it. With the Avengers and on all the new stuff that's coming out with Marvel, I'm gonna tell you still to this day, even when Phase 5 is introduced, I'm gonna still think about M. Night Shyamalan's East Rail 177 trilogy because I think it's all three films together. I think it's an underrated masterpiece of a trilogy, or one of a rare case that you don't normally really see, and that's rare. That's rare. That's rare to have a experimental franchise like this. If M. Night ever decides in the future to somewhat revisit this, which I don't think he plans, maybe expand it to a television show that I could potentially see this maybe on Apple. I don't have Apple, but on Apple because of servant TV. But I could see this franchise expand to like a limited series or like a television series of exploring real life, realistic portrayals of superheroes dealing with really personal traumas, with personal um, real life scenarios, but trying to come to terms that they have superhuman abilities and how do they go about it. That's rare. I mean, they exaggerate in mainstream movies, but this here, I firmly believe like this would be a gold mine. This movie needs to be revisited again. Like I'm telling you guys. And honestly, I know people crapped on Bruce Willis's performance in this movie. I thought his performance was great. And compared to his other movies that he's done, I mean, he's retired, and I hope he gets better. I thought he delivered one of his best performance of the last since he was in Red. Out of the decade, out of the decade, like I felt like he really cared about this property and this work and this character. I just feel like because of how it was, we didn't maybe get enough of him, and maybe at the time he was still dealing with his illness. But I feel like he really freaking tried in this movie, and I firmly believe. I think he was nominated for Ramsey for this movie. Fuck that. Yeah, he was amazing in this film. I wish they did give him more to do, but he was amazing in this film. This movie was phenomenal. It was phenomenal, and honestly, it was actually my favorite film of 2019. I know there were a lot of good other movies that came out in 2019, even Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But I swear to God, in January when this movie came out, I saw it twice. I couldn't stop thinking about Glass. Not any other film surpassed it. Not any other film that came out that year. Glass was my number one. It's actually one of my favorite superhero films ever made. Glass, have you seen it? Comment below. Let me know what you thought about it. Didn't mean for this video to be long, almost an hour, but you know what? I just had so much to say about this film. I just had to give it. I just had to give it out. Comment below. Let me know what is your favorite underrated movie and what you believe is a underrated superhero film. Take care.